if you could install one of these in front of every single storm drain, you're removing 99% of total suspended solids, 97% of diesel and motor oil. Each of our basins can hold around 22 gallons of trash and solids. So it's like every time you maintain it, every time it fills up, you're removing that from entering our oceans. That's the beauty of it, is like you are doing it all, and you're doing it all at the street level. It's not complicated.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Advisor AI Solutions podcast, where we spotlight the change makers shaping a cleaner, greener future. I'm your host, Jordan Salvador, and today we have an incredible story for you. From a sketch that sat in a drawer for 2 decades to a cutting edge stormwater filtration system protecting oceans and waterways, I'm happy to introduce to you Navy McKee, CEO and co founder of Pono Solutions. Navy, it's so great to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know you're, calling in from San Diego.
Mhm.
Are there any cool recent events that's going on down there right now?
Let's see. Well, California, I feel like is a pretty big event hub. I've gone to a few different conferences for stormwater. My favorite's the Casca one. That one's in Pasadena, but that's technically Los Angeles. And then as far as just like the greater San Diego area, the food's always bomb down here. So
Oh yeah.
in terms of stormwater, Casca Conference is the best to be at in California, and food, San Diego is the best to be at. So
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And like I
yeah.
mentioned, my family was just in San Diego, but I'm definitely gonna have to put that at the top of the list next time we come
Yep.
visit you guys. Okay, so I have to say, the way that we kind of discovered you, and you guys discovered the idea, I suppose more so. Um, your journey started from discovering a design that your father had drawn, like over what 20 years ago. Can
Yep.
you kind of take us back to that moment and how you found it and what kind of made you think of what's come to life
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and my dad is a brilliant inventor. He's been in the construction industry for over 30 plus years. So, as a blue collar worker, so he's been a contractor. He's worked on large flood control divisions, highways, freeways, bridges, large, you know, structures, $1 million homes, $1 billion, like just everything construction wise, you name it, he's probably built it at some point. And back about 25 years ago, 26 years ago now, around the time that I was born, he was working out in the field, and he was seeing that what they were doing for stormwater control, they were putting out these socks in front of the storm drain, which a lot of people still do. That's kind of the problem that we're trying to avoid. People were putting out the socks in front of the storm drain, and then they would just pull the sock back at the end of construction, and they would spray everything down the storm drain. So it wasn't serving any kind of purpose at all, basically. And so, no hate to the socks. They do serve a good purpose when you're using them correctly, but a lot of people don't really know how to use them. And so, my dad back then was like, this is just kind of a headache, like doing all this all the time. So, he had invented, I guess, like the initial concept of Kaipono Solutions, which was a curb and gutter filtration system. And nobody was doing it at the time. Nobody is still doing it besides us. But he was a blue collar worker, had a young family, no college degree or business background, and just kind of packaged it up and didn't really do anything with it. He was kind of running his own ship at the time and just didn't really have the time to put into starting a business and let alone manufacturing something. Put it in a box with his other hundreds of inventions that he has created over the years, and just never touched it again. And then I got to college. No, I mean, we've always kind of known that I would be an entrepreneur. I'm a pretty stubborn child. And so I think everybody's always known that. I didn't know that until I had gotten to college and was like, I really want to do something for myself. Like, I want to start my own company. So I had joined a business incubator on campus and was, going through the whole process of what it took to start a company. And I was starting these little companies that were trendy and not anything I was passionate about. I should have mentioned this in the beginning, but my dad raised me in Hawaii, so we spent every day of our lives in the ocean, and that's something we truly shared together was our love for the ocean. And so I kept doing these little trendy companies. They kept failing because I wasn't passionate about them, and they were just kind of, eyewash little companies. And finally, I had an advisor who was like, listen, I see the potential in you. I know you'll be a good founder, but you've got to think bigger, and you've got to think, something you're passionate about. And for me, it ultimately came down to the ocean. But that's a huge problem to solve, is like ocean pollution. Where do you even start? And so at this point, I had no idea what a storm drain was. I really didn't. And I was talking to my dad, like, hey, I really want to do something around the ocean. And he's like, I have this idea, this concept that I drew up a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, but that has nothing to do with the ocean. I don't think, like, what are you talking about? And he's like, everything that goes into a storm drain enters a waterway unfiltered and untreated. And that was like mind blowing to me. I grew up in Hawaii my whole life. I knew you couldn't swim 72 hours post rainfall, but I was like, okay, like, I mean, I guess. So I started doing research on stormwater and I was like, oh my God, this is the problem. It's, according to the EPA, the number one cause of water quality impairment is stormwater runoff. And so I was like, okay, this is it. And he's like, I don't even know how the device fully works yet, but like, I've got the initial concept. And I'm like, let's roll with it. Like, let's do it. So I had brought on a few college engineers. I mean, everybody just like, we just brought them on, like they were passionate about water too. And they basically engineer proofed it. And here we are now, 5 years later.
I absolutely love that Navy. Now, not only that you teamed up with your father, but then you also had to know how to take knowledge from your advisors, and then bring on other team members, the other engineers, and to
Yeah.
be able to devise something, to ultimately, um, you know, save the stormwater systems.
Right.
But I actually didn't know that about, you're not able to swim 72 hours after a rainfall either. Like that's
I
pretty
mean, you
traumatic.
can, but you're probably going to get sick. You might get an infection. Like that's why the water's so brown and dusted up after it rains, is because it's all going through the storm drains. Think of like dog droppings,
Oh
places
man.
in cities where there may be like needles or, trash, pollution, any of that goes through a storm drain.
Oh man.
It's
That's
scary, right?
oh yeah, that's not something you want your kid to be swimming in.
Absolutely
Never mind
not. Yeah.
yourself. So would you say that from the get-go then it's always been about ocean health?
Yeah, for me at least, like it's always been at my core and it's always been like that was a problem I wanted to solve. Like I said, I have never picked up a hammer in my life. I mean, I helped my dad build our house when we were younger, but that's the extent of like what my, construction background is. So, um, it's nice that I have him on the technical side because he's been in the industry forever. He can build anything. And I'm not just saying that because he's my dad, but like he is brilliant, incredible builder. And so for me, a lot of it was passion, and it's passion for him too. Like I said, we grew up in the ocean together. Like he raised me there. But he's got a lot of the technical background. And then I have now, over the past 5 years, would consider myself an expert by doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in the early stages, when you were, starting to put these ideas together and actually start doing them,
Mhm.
what would you say, your guys' early challenges convincing people, that this idea could even scale?
Yeah, I think that's something about the stormwater industry that's interesting. And I told my dad, like, well, now that I've started a company in stormwater, I think I could start a company anywhere because this has got to be one of the most difficult industries to start a company in, unfortunately. And I think that's all infrastructure, and any kind of construction. I mean, these guys are building, infrastructure that has to last for people. It has to be safe. It has to, go through the regulatory process. So while I understand that, it's definitely incredibly hard as a founder to break into the industry. So we're selling to engineers who, again, have to be the trustworthy, opinion in this entire process. When it comes to the plans and building out the plans, they have to be the trusted person. And so initially what we had done is we were trying to find somebody to put in our systems for us. We're like, hey, we will literally just like give it to you for free. Like somebody just implement them. And everybody was scared because they had never installed anything like this before, and there's nothing like it that exists. So it's kind of like nobody really knows what we're putting in here, and like we don't want to have some huge sinkhole or somewhere, like people just don't understand it yet. So what we had done is we had found a little piece of property in Hawaii where my dad is at currently, and we manufactured our basins with stainless steel. Basically my dad put everything together, welded it together. This is like bootstrapping to the max, put it into the ground, and we saw that it works. Like it works, it takes out everything it needs to. We've ran our testing on it. And so at that point, we told everybody, like, okay, now we have one install, but people want to be first to be second. So they knew it was our pilot. And they're like, okay, well, has any other agency adopted this? And we're like, oh my God. And they're like, what certifications do you have? What regulatory do you have? And I'm like, I don't know anything about the regulatory. Like and that's the thing about the stormwater world, and people may fight me on this, but There are so many regulatory actions. Nobody knows which ones you need for which municipality, why they exist, who wrote them, where you go to get them. It's really just a Wild West still, in my opinion. I think the industry is not organized in terms of like knowing the steps you have to get through. And now I know why there's very little competition in the stormwater industry, because it's very hard to break into. And this is all just me discovering this as I go. So if you can't tell I'm passionate about ocean quality now, you're going to understand that that's what's been driving me this whole time. So we end up finding out that we can apply for the California trash capture certification. That one was free. Also, a lot of these certifications can cost up to hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement. So we were like, okay, we'll do the California trash capture certification. We ended up going through that process for a year and a half. It was pretty difficult to obtain, in my opinion, but we finally got it. And that was enough for us to be like, okay, we've got some third party has looked at us and been like, this thing works. So we ended up going to a trade. So that was like, we've been doing R&D for the last 4 years. Again, we know it works. I trust my dad with every ounce of being in my body. I'm like, our pilot has been fantastic. And so it's really, and it's not a difficult concept either. It's not anything that's like, you know, where you have to excavate a gajillion cubic yards of anything. Like, it's very small, compact. And so we had gone to a conference, the Casca conference last year, and we had talked to somebody, we had showed them what we were doing, and he was like, oh, we need this like yesterday. Like, where have you guys been? But I think it's having that certification was like, kind of, people are like, oh, okay, yeah, it works. Okay, what now where can we put them in? And so it was really funny how just having that check mark like changed everybody's perspective entirely. But yeah, that was kind of, I guess, our biggest challenge was getting through this like regulatory aspect and getting engineers to trust us. And I think we're in a pretty good spot now.
That's awesome. It's great to have, some kind of, foundation and certification that, stand on that really
Yep.
elevates you to, get that push. But Navy, you guys definitely aren't alone. So many of our guests that have been on prior to yourself, they've shared that same struggle, that same frustration as far as getting through those compliance and regulatories and the inconsistencies between municipalities,
Right.
especially in the green industry, renewables,
Yep.
sustainability fields. But no, I commend you for pushing through and getting to that next barrier. That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So just to paint a little picture for our listeners who don't know, what your guys' solution, what your system actually looks like. Do you mind painting that picture and like kind of describing it for us?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with stormwater, I can give you the picture of kind of what's out there on the market and kind of how we're plugging in. And so something that I like to disclose from the earlier stages to any other stormwater company is we're not coming in as competitors. We actually ultimately are coming in as partners. We want to partner with other stormwater companies and be used as a standalone product if people see fit for their sites, which we have done on a lot of different sites. But a lot of our contracts have been actually pairing up with other stormwater devices. So basically, you have your, I guess, the area of trash capture. So a lot of trash capture devices go in the inlet and the stormwater inlet, or sorry, storm drain inlet. Um, and while these can work really well, sometimes they're not super efficient for high flow areas where you get a lot of pollution. If they're not maintained correctly, sometimes they can collapse and clog a storm drain. We've seen it happen with a few municipalities already who have expressed frustration with having collapsed devices in their storm drain. So that's a big reason as to why we didn't decide to block the storm drain. That's why we sit on the outside of the storm drain. And we are patent pending for that location as well, which is really exciting for us because it protects us in that sense. And so there's that end of like the trash capture devices. A lot of them are in the storm drain. And then you have the really large underground, retention, detention, biofiltration, which are the big boys. And they do a lot of the heavy filtration, which is great, but sometimes they're hard to maintain, and they can cost a lot of money to replace. So the way we're kind of carving ourselves into the market is we're operating as a pre-treatment system for a lot of these devices. So what we're doing is, since we're at that curb and cut, we can take a ton without blocking or the existing storm drain, which is a huge asset, and why engineers are ultimately choosing us at the end of the day, is because they can pair us with one of their large systems. So basically, Pono Solutions is a 3-basin system. We're about 12 inches deep. 9 feet long. It's almost like, I hate to say this because I don't want to compare it directly to that, but it's almost like a trench drain when you see it from the outside. We're just covered by grates. Water falls into our basins. We filter water out through the basins, and then it just discharges into the storm drain. So in a sense, from the outside, it can kind of look like a trench drain, but I don't like to say that because that's not necessarily what we are. Um, and then, yeah, we have our first basin is empty. We capture a lot of our heavy solids there. The cool thing about our device is that it's custom to site specific contaminant. So another way that we are collaborating with the stormwater market is collaborating with filtration media people as well. So if you provide filtration media, we're happy to take your filtration media and put it in our system and partner together. So we're not creating any kind of proprietary media. We're just providing the hardware. So we've been collaborating with a lot of stormwater companies as well on taking their filtration media, putting it into our system, and then we have that collaborative, I guess, relationship. And same with the big detention and retention basins. They're loving how they can pre-treat their systems because for them, it makes them look better in the terms of extending their life cycle, extending their maintenance, because that's the number one thing in the stormwater industry. Again, I went through a college incubator, so I was put through boot camp of starting a company. And one of the one of the main tasks was going out and you have to speak to at least 60 plus members of your target market. So that's anywhere from municipalities, public works, engineers, anybody who is affiliated with our target market. I had to talk to them and I couldn't sell them anything. I just had to say, hey, what's the issue with the stormwater world? I don't have a product for you yet. I may have one in the future. I don't know, but I just want to pick your brain. And we had asked like over 60 plus members, like, what's your biggest issue? 72% of them were concerned with cost and maintenance on their devices. Like that was the big kicker. That was it, cost and maintenance. So that's kind of how we're working with these larger systems, is telling them like, hey, like you can actually sell to your customers as well that if you implement this pre-treatment device, their maintenance is going to be so easy. They can pull up with a vac truck, pull off the lid. Sorry, not a vac truck. You can pull up in a public works truck. You don't have to have any big vac truck or anything crazy like that. It could be your Honda Civic. You could pull up, take the grates off the top, use a shop vac that you could buy from Home Depot, shop vac the basins, put the lid back on, and you're good to go. Instead of having these big crews come out with, vac trucks and all these, spraying out the systems, all these crazy things. And they're like, oh yeah, like that helps us a ton. So we're doing a lot of the pre-treatment for those larger devices.
Navy, that's so smart. Like, just the way that you guys have figured out a way to, I guess, have a plug-and-play system collaboration with other, filtration suppliers.
Yeah.
But then also giving them a reason to add even more value by using your guys' systems and being able to upsell it and just give them up, essentially a more effective solution
Yeah.
to these problems. That's
Yeah,
absolutely
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah. And like I
So,
said, like we don't want to come in telling everybody like, hey, we own this market. It's like, no, we want to work with you. Like, let's be friends.
no, that's the best way to do it, and that's the best way to
Yeah.
penetrate that market, right?
Yeah.
Is to have these partnerships. Now, as far as partnerships go, I saw that you guys are in the scaling phase. Do you guys are currently working with a factory for manufacturing right now?
Yeah, so we have, we're made in America, which is great. We have a manufacturing partner. So we don't have our own manufacturing facility. I think that would have made my bootstrapping costs nearly impossible. So we've got a great manufacturing facility in Kansas, which is great, smack dab in the middle of the US. So we're able to ship to both sides of the US. And then we don't really face any of kind of like that tariff war that's happening, which has been nice. So we're in a great spot. And then, yeah, and like I said, the filter manufacturers, we don't manufacture our own filters. We simply partner with others for that.
That's awesome. Sounds like you guys have a pretty streamlined operation.
I would think so. And that, I mean, whether it was purposeful or not, it was just because we're we're broke. I was a college student putting this together. I'm like, all right, we've got to streamline as hard as we can.
I love it. I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
Davey. So looking beyond the Pono solution or system for just a moment, what upcoming technology trends or maybe innovations have you seen upcoming that they're going to have the biggest impact on water treatment or sustainability over say the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, well, I gotta be honest with you. And like I said, I love all my stormwater friends in the industry, but there is a huge lack of innovation. We had gone to the Stormwater Conference last year, and we showed up, and people were like, who are these people? Because everyone knows each other. All the same companies go to the same conferences, and it's the same stuff over and over. And I understand why, because it's very hard to get certified and get regulated, you know? So there's not a ton of innovation in stormwater, I would say. It's been a lot of the same companies for the last maybe 10 to 15 years. So I would say we're one of those people. I think that we are the new innovation in stormwater. And it's been interesting that I'm also in the startup world. So I'm in this construction world, but my main background is in the startup world. So we're actually going into the stormwater world from a startup perspective, if that makes sense. So a lot of times I'll go to pitch competitions or I'll pitch to investors and they're like, we've never seen this. And it's like, yeah, because stormwater doesn't typically get like venture funded. So that's been interesting, is like approaching it from a stormwater perspective. And for me, since we do have such a young team, it's me and then a lot of, college. Well, we're all out of college now as of like 5 years. But we've got a young team, and we've got my dad, who I think is pretty cool as well. Let's block that out for him. But I think he's pretty cool as well, pretty trendy. And our main thing from the beginning has been like, let's make stormwater cool. Like, let's not make it something that like people look at and they're like, oh God, some infrastructure product. Like, that sucks. Like, we're actually adding in a component to the public as well, to where it's not like this boring, crusty infrastructure business. And so we're adding in that, that cool, fresh, young component as well. And that's obviously something that's in the works as we continue to move on. But just having good branding, having, innovative trade show booths, and, making it more appealing to the public as well. Because I promise you, 95% of my friends don't know what stormwater is, and that's a huge problem.
Yeah, it's definitely a underserved market, where we definitely need to get that message out there, and and
Yeah,
ultimately make that greater impact, to
right,
benefit not just the world but also humanity. So
right.
that's absolutely terrific. Um, okay, so I know with growth there obviously comes its own sets of challenges, but maybe if you had a magic wand and you could fix one major challenge holding you guys back from growing, what would that be?
I think the regulatory component. I think, or I guess if I had a magic wand and it came down to if I could just choose anything in the world, I think one, the long sales cycle does kind of suck. I'm not going to lie. And I think anybody in infrastructure knows that. Construction, infrastructure, like the long timelines are pretty killer. But with that being said, as we ramp up, everything's more consistent. But I think that I would take out all the middlemen and all of the decision makers in the process, and I would narrow it down to one person who makes the decision and implements the device, and that's it, and then purchases off the shelf. Unfortunately, that's not the type of industry we're in. There's a lot of people who get involved, and that's okay. It's fine. I've accepted that. I'm moving through it seamlessly now. But then also, yeah, the regulatory component, and just making it easier for, I mean, we're on the municipality side. I see, and industrial facilities, all these people have these regulatory aspects just like weighing on them. But again, the stormwater industry, it's very hard to understand what's going on, what needs to be implemented, what needs to be used, what's certified, what's not, how many, gallons per minute goes through this device and not this. It's a very confusing industry. And maybe I say that because I'm not a stormwater engineer, but I've gotten a lot of the same feedback. So I think just having an industry where things are more streamlined, and I think that's the beauty of it right now, and the beauty of it for us as a startup is like, it's pretty quiet, but I really do think stormwater is on the boom, and I think it's going to be the next big thing. And like, truly, I think we're at the spearhead of it.
I love that. Okay, so with that being said, say you were to, remove the regulations, all these delays, we were to be able to put you in front of the CEOs instantly. What kind of measurable environmental impact do you think that would, have on not just the world, but also on your guys' mission?
Yeah, I mean, if you could install one of these in front of every single storm drain, you're removing 99% of total suspended solids, 97% of diesel and motor oil. Um, each of our basins can hold around 22 gallons of trash and solids. So it's like every time you maintain it, or every time it fills up, you're removing that from entering our oceans. So for me, again, going back to being an ocean nerd, I think that that's the beauty of it, is like you are doing it all, and you're doing it all at the street level. It's not complicated. It's very easy. And I think it's something that I wish municipalities understood more, is like how much easier it'll make their lives. And again, that comes with having traction in the industry, having more installs, seeing their friend next door do it because they don't want to be the first person. They want to wait for Joe at, the city over to do it first, and then they'll do it. But I think that we can make a huge impact. And I think that, like I said, according to the Environmental Protection Agency, urban runoff is the leading source of water quality impairment. Like that, I mean, yes, think about like microplastics and plastics and straws and this and that going into our storm drains or going into our oceans. You have to remember how those things get there. And either one, it comes from boats and trash and things like that. But for the most part, all that stuff is flowing through a storm drain, and that is your direct channel to the ocean. Is all of that trash is going through a storm drain. So if you can solve the problem at the source without changing human behavior, because listen, I know a lot of people who hate paper straws. I am not a huge fan of them either, but I'm an environmentalist, so I use them. But I know a lot of people who are like, I'm never using one of those and I don't care. I don't care about the environment, unfortunately. And you're not going to get everyone to care about it. And so that's why the municipalities have to be the ones to make the change.
Yes, you're absolutely right there. I can echo that further.
Yeah.
Okay, Navy. So before we wrap, I just have two questions to ask every single guest on our show. The first is, if you weren't doing the great work that you guys are doing now, what do you think you'd be doing instead?
I think working for a startup. I love the startup world. Like it's my jam. And I do think it would be around the environment. I think, like I said, I was lucky to really hone into what I was passionate about in college or really focus on that because I probably could have gotten thrown off and again into more trendy startups and this and that. But I think at the end of the day, I would have come back to being in the ocean space somewhere and probably working for an ocean startup. On another note, I always complain about how much I hate the legal part of everything, but I think that I would probably go to law school. So maybe in the future after I get this thing up and moving, maybe I'd go to law school. I think I'm really good at it, the legal part of it. So you never know. Stay tuned.
I love that. Just on our brief moments together, I think you'd be terrific in law also.
Thank you.
Your passion and drive is definitely inspiring, Navy.
Thank you.
Um, so our second question, if our listeners could take just one action today, either big or small, what would that would help make the world a better place? Sorry, what would you want it to be?
I mean, it kind of goes back to, and this is going to contradict what I just said because a lot of people don't care about the environment, and I can't force you to care about the environment. But I do think it is something to be aware of is like, if you litter, if you see trash on the ground, like it's important to know that those things will make their way to a waterway in one way or another. Water controls a lot of the way the world works, whether we know it or not. And so whether it rains and that stuff gets just swept into the ocean, or somebody, changes their oil in their driveway and all their oil flows down the street. You don't think about where those things go. You think, oh, maybe they just get diluted, or where does it go? It's still going somewhere. And so I think just being aware of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and how that affects storm drains. And I know everybody's going to be like, okay, cool. Like I'm still going to change my oil in my driveway, but it's something to be aware of. And if you have any municipality ties or you have stormwater ties, it's definitely good to start thinking about the future of stormwater and stepping out of your comfort zone into how we can actually solve these problems. So
That's terrific, and that's absolutely something that should be top of mind in everyone's daily lives, which isn't. So,
right.
yeah, that's a wonderful goal.
Yeah.
So, Navy, before we sign off, I'd love for you to share with our listeners on how they can follow your guys' journey and follow how and figure out how they can get involved. What's the best place for them to find you guys?
Yeah, so our Instagram is where we post a lot of our frequent updates. So that would be Pono Solutions. So KAIPONO Solutions. Just that on Instagram. Same thing with our website, kaiponosolutions.com. We try to update that regularly with any kind of updates, mentions, features, anything like that. And those are kind of our two main hubs as to where you can find us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Davey, for joining us and sharing your story. And to our listeners, remember, innovation doesn't always start in a lab. Sometimes it starts as a drawing in a jar, waiting for the right person to bring it to life. So until next time, keep building the future you guys want to see. Thanks again for everything.
You never know, your future children could pick up your storm drain idea and take it to the future 25 years from now. So keep that in mind as you
I,
innovate.
I love that, Navy.